Is there a lot of room in fluke?
I lost 10% of my lambs.
Right.
A sick sheep is a dead sheep.
When a vet comes.
Little job on today. My vet is on the way out. We might nab him for a bit of a chat when he gets here. I'm not sure if he'll want to speak on camera, but hopefully he will. We'll catch up with you in a bit. We are blood testing these rams for the export sale coming up on the 2nd of August in Carrick-on-Shannon. I have my vet here. Josh is out, and Josh is using a headstock for the first time. He's never actually seen one of these. Josh, what do you make of them?
It's pretty good. Pretty good. It makes it a whole lot easier.
Good man. You're welcome to Sheepshead.
Thank you.
It's not too often I have a vet out here, thankfully. I'm lucky enough I don't get that much trouble with the sheep. But we're just using it here for holding these. So we have 2 down, 3 down now. Out we go. Oh, my little girl Enya's here as well. Are you saying hello? No. No, she's had a busy morning after sheep, so she's tired too. Come on, up we go. So I'm just using my walk-through pen here as a kind of a corral, and I have the headstock here at the end. Almost like a kind of a forcing one here. We'll just get this lad turned and hope he doesn't take my knees with him. There we go. That's great.
Yep.
See, Josh is just kind of working out through the gate here. Not the first time you blood tested sheep.
I know.
Good man. Just for the records.
Excellent.
Lovely. That's another one done. Yeah, that's nice. We'll just tighten these boys up a little bit. Come on, up you go. Gonna close this gate. This is one of the better rams. I think this is the first one in the sale. He's one of my favourite sheep. Possibly one of the best ones I think I've ever bred. Come on. Come on, big boy. So this is the ram I had out in Dundalk show. If you haven't seen that video, it is this one. I came 2nd place with him. Lost to a really good sheep. But if I could, I would keep him. But he's a little bit too closely related to the rest of my flock. So I really need to sell him, which is unfortunate because he's really good bloodlines. And actually won a championship with his mother way back when I was starting out at sheep. So he has very good breeding and he looks the part. Really like this sheep. So this ram also has extremely high star ratings on his breeding index, and I think that comes from his mother. When you look here at his mother's progeny, she has been an exceptional sheep in the flock, producing good crops of lambs consistently every year. He's just a little bit too closely related to everything in my flock, which is unfortunate.
Will that hurt the sheep?
Will it hurt the sheep? It hurts a little bit. It's a bit like when you had your injections, a little bit of a prick, but not too bad. You see, I have trouble actually with ears, Josh. You see this kind of scabbing, freshly tagged. Is there anything you can do with that?
There's no number on it. What have you tried?
I have tried a bit of blue spray.
Blue spray.
Yeah.
I find sometimes a couple of shots of penicillin can help.
Yeah, so some of the ears got that badly infected I had to remove the tags.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
We'll let this lad go. Yeah. Just the one. So you see the walk-through trough is actually quite handy here for corralling these sheep. What do you think, Anya? You happy? So you'll see I have some problem here with a wound on his head, and it's definitely infected because you can see the kind of a pus and gunky stuff coming out of it. This lad isn't as bad, but Josh, you recommend a bit of penicillin?
Penicillin? Penicillin would be the brand name, the trade name.
Okay, okay.
But it's licensed for sheep, so it's not a cascade drug. So
Yeah,
say Sinulox would be your other option,
Yeah.
but it's cascade, it's not meant for sheep.
okay.
We're using it as an alternative, and we should try and move away from
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
You create some resistance for other.
Yeah, when you really need
You'd
it.
rather say the Sinulox for say
Yeah.
a mastitis or something.
Aye, and this isn't a serious wound.
Isn't serious.
Yeah.
You know, if it was going into the ear, or if you had a bit of meningitis alongside it, you'd want something a bit stronger.
Yeah,
But it's skin deep. It's only
Yeah.
superficial.
yeah, okay. I could tighten him a bit more now, he's a bit slow.
Just because he's going to start jumping when I.
Yep.
Find him otherwise. Oh, steady. Good lad.
All right. Okay. I let this lad go. No, let you go. So I've them lifted up pretty high, kind of stretches their neck out. Is it making it any easier for you, Josh?
Oh yeah, if we were doing it without that, it would get you to lift the head up.
Right back to stretch it up. Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's
Just go down there.
doing the same job as that.
Good. So this is the last lad in. So this blood test is compulsory for export. So they have to be scrapey type 1,
Yeah.
which I am getting from my genotype tag here. And this is a Brucella ovis test. Is that right, Josh?
That's right. Brucellosis, Brucella ovis would be the type of Brucella. It's an infection in sheep
Yeah.
that we have to test for if they're going over the sea.
We'll see if you had an animal positive with the brucellosis.
Yeah.
Does it, like, can you see it? Is it obvious or is it?
No. So a lot of the time they can be a carrier.
Right.
So they won't show up with any signs of disease.
Yeah.
But they can pass it along to another animal. So,
Okay. So,
worth testing for.
Yeah.
And kind of getting rid
Okay.
of if you did have positive.
well, all we can do in this instance now is hope for the best. I've tested rams before, not that many, so I'll hope now. He's got me worried now that there's a few. We'll hope for the best anyway.
It'll be fine.
Yeah. Right, we'll let this lad go. That's the last one. You have his number there?
I have his number. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And you just jump down off that gate, please. Good girl. That's it. Out you go. Now.
Now, you're watching what I was doing there. You'll be able to do them next time, yeah?
Yeah, she definitely gets stuck in. She was helping me get sheep up the race yesterday, weren't you? Yeah. She's mad for work, aren't you?
Do you want to come around with me for the day?
She'd love it. no, but we were at the sheep for about half an hour and she started to yawn. She had to go for a nap then. Yeah. I nearly could have done the same myself. Yeah. So what do you think of my headstock, Josh?
Oh, it's fantastic. It makes such a difference for raising the head up and just getting the vein.
Yeah.
And I find if you have someone holding the sheep, then they're still bucking and jumping.
Yeah.
Whereas that, they kind of do settle down.
Yeah, they're kind of beaten. They know they're
quickly,
beaten and the power goes out of them. So your spring, the mad season is over now.
Yeah, thank God.
What are you seeing now on farms in general?
Bits and pieces of pneumonia.
Yes, the weather probably,
Yeah.
the cold weather probably is adding to that.
It's a strange year, really. We've seen less of some things and more of others.
Yeah.
A bit more meningitis and things. So meningitis live in damp environments.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a bit more of that. There's a lot of nutrient deficiencies at the moment.
Funny, I read that with the calves,
Yeah.
especially in younger animals.
Yeah, but there's fertility problems as well in cows.
But that's probably coming from...
Yeah, from minerals.
Yeah.
So I've done blood tests on a few herds now and came back negative for infections, but they're low on selenium and copper and different minerals.
And is that down to the wet and the grass quality just...
Yeah. So they haven't, the grass hasn't taken in the nutrients from the soil quite as well.
Yeah.
Because of the weather, because of the wet and everything.
So ground that would normally be okay,
Oh, yeah.
it's just a particular year.
Yeah, and the silage is good. Like it's good energy-wise.
Yeah.
Just not. It doesn't have the minerals in it.
That's interesting because I was speaking to other farmers that never had a problem with orf before, and they're having quite a trouble with orf.
Yeah.
And some of the vets were saying that it could be down to stress and nutritional deficiency.
A bit of a lack.
Yeah. Now, and funny you say that. This was the first year I bolused my lambs.
Yeah.
Cobalt bolus, and I haven't a single lamb with orf.
And would you normally?
Normally have a few. Now it wouldn't be a major problem, but I would definitely have a few.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if the bolus has done a job, but it's interesting that there is a deficiency there in stock.
Oh, the bolusing's a great job.
Yeah.
You know you're covered.
Yeah.
Even if you don't need it, it's covering your back on any of your minerals that you could be missing.
Yeah, sometimes it's very easy to talk yourself out of it, I find. And I've been guilty of that. Especially if you have to run lambs in to drench them if you're drenching.
It's work.
So I decided to bolus this year, and I think I would. Well, I've done a test. It'll be interesting to see. I've done 50 that aren't treated.
Okay,
and recorded them. So it'll be interesting to see what that shows up. But I've actually done my older stock. I've done these rams as well. They've all been bolused, and they've just been on grass, so they're in pretty good nick.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And my hoggets, breeding hogget yos are in good nick as well. I bolused them with a cobalt bolus as well. So I think it's pure chance I just landed on a year that maybe it is needed.
Yeah, I'd be interested to find out if it does make a difference.
Yeah. Well, on the channel, I have a lot of new and younger sheep farmers starting off. Kind of like myself, I still class myself as a new sheep farmer. If you had to give a starting farmer with sheep in particular, what would you advise them? That's a pretty long, open-ended question.
That's a very open question.
It's a good job he's not in a panic.
Get plenty of help.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, labour. Yeah.
But no, some of the biggest things would be getting beastings into lambs, making sure that you keep an eye on them. Mastitis would be easy missed in ewes.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of that is caught too late.
Yeah.
So keeping an eye out for that. Other than that, I only see it when there's a problem.
Yeah, you
it's
get
already
the call.
too late.
Well, funny, there's a saying that a lot of farmers have, and I know you might have an explanation for it. I have my thinking on it, but I'll get your thoughts on it. The saying goes, a sick sheep is a dead sheep.
Yeah, that's what I grew up with as well.
Yeah. I don't think it's really fair.
No, I think you have to catch things a lot earlier with a sheep. With the cow, they can get quite sick and come back better.
Yeah.
The sheep do go downhill quite quickly. But I do think that they're worth treating a lot of the time. Prevention is very important. So your boluses, your minerals, your dosing as well. Worms and fluke could be a big one.
Yeah.
And one of the best things we can do is take dung samples and send them away to find out, do we need to dose or not?
If you have a problem.
Yeah.
Well, interesting you say that, the prevention, and I might have mentioned in another video. The Clostridial bacteria, there was one year I talked myself out of vaccinating lambs. And in that particular year, I probably had about 200 lambs. I lost 10% of my lambs in the field, died. Almost looked like they died in their sleep.
Oh yeah.
But it soon changed my mind that when you mentioned preventative measures, it's money well spent.
Oh yeah.
Vaccinations.
Every disease, every infection, every problem that you can prevent is one less problem in the future. Yeah. It's one thing that when a vet comes and we say, it looks like it's this, and you say, it's vaccinated against that. Yeah. We can cross that off the list, and it means you're looking at less serious diseases to try and treat, and your treatments are more valuable. They're better in the end. Yeah. So
you'd be a big believer in vaccinating preventative measures?
Yeah. No, when required, you can overdo. So prevention for, say, fluke and worm can be overdone.
Yes, and that's a bigger problem, of course. Yeah.
You don't want to create resistance because there's some things say rumen fluke, there's only one drug that works.
Yeah.
So if you have a resistance
Yeah.
to that, then you're pretty screwed.
You have a problem.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully, there's no known resistance to it yet.
No, not yet. But
you just need a few
we're trying to
facts.
keep it that way. So
Yeah.
we don't want to be overdoing it. That's why the dung sampling would be so good.
Yeah.
Because we know, do you need to dose or not?
Yeah.
And we can target better. We can do targeted prevention rather than treat for
Blanket
everything.
treatment,
Yeah. It saves you money as well.
Well, funny you say that. Yesterday I was dosing my lambs and I've been using some new technology. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's an app called Smart Worm that takes different data from weather to grass growth to fecal egg samples, and in particular growth rates from the lambs, and it will tell you whether they need a dose or not.
Right.
So I think it was 40% of my lambs did not need a dose yesterday. They were thriving pretty well. They were reaching their target weights, and then the ones did. So it'll be interesting. That was the first time I've ever used it now, but I think there's a future in that, because
definitely.
it's the biggest problem I face now, being highly stocked, is problems with worms, and of course the old saying that a sheep's biggest enemy is the one standing beside her. And I think there's a lot of truth in it.
Yeah.
So have you any other advice now for sheep farmers in general?
Not really.
Well, I'll tell you actually a good one, and one that I took from Finbar himself.
Yep.
Finbar that owns the practice Josh works in. The boss, the big boss. Finbar gave me advice at one of his talks, and it was, if you don't want the vet to call out, load your sheep in the trailer and bring her in.
Yeah.
Do you know, and that is the problem. A lot of farmers will say to themselves, I'll just swap arms here, my arm's getting tired holding this camera. But a lot of farmers will say, oh, it's only an old cullio, she's only worth whatever it is, 80 or 100 quid.
Yeah.
But if you take her into the vets, it's not the most expensive thing in the world.
No.
And you might find out if you have another problem,
That's it. If you have a bit of mastitis or pneumonia, it's likely to spread to another animal. So treat the one and know what works.
Yeah.
Then you know what to go with for any others that pop up.
Yeah.
It's very rare that pneumonia only hits the one animal.
Yes.
You generally see it in 4s or 5s, and it'll spread.
Yeah.
So it starts with an older one, and
is it in some sense contagious pneumonia?
yeah.
It is.
So it's the same as pneumonia or any cold or respiratory infection.
And is the P and Hepativac P, is that what that kind of covers?
Yeah.
That's a different version of it, is it?
Well, pneumonia is kind of an umbrella term. It's
Right.
any lung infection.
Right.
So P in pneumonia stands for Pasteurella.
Yeah.
So it treats Pasteurella, which can cause pneumonias.
Right.
But there would be there's no way of preventing all pneumonias. We have, say, pneumonia vaccines in calves, but it doesn't treat every pneumonia. It treats the 3 main ones.
Yeah.
And it still prevents the 3 main dangerous ones, but they can get other infections. So there's no preventing everything.
Yeah.
And that'd tie back to your worms again, so lungworm and that kind of thing can leave them weak to an infection, to pneumonia afterwards.
Well, would I be right in saying back in last year there was a lot of suckler and dairy herds had a problem with pneumonia?
Yeah.
And that was down to lungworm?
So a lot of it down to lungworm.
Down to the weather, of course, again.
The weather again, so changing temperature. When it goes from a nice warm day like we had the other day to a colder day, and then the nights are still fairly cold at times, it leaves them open to pneumonia. It leaves the pneumonia bugs can breed a lot quicker and spread through them. So.
I think the other problem a lot of us are facing as well is with the weather, the grass isn't growing particularly well. And I think, even though it's not obvious, but hunger is a major contributing factor in sheep anyway.
Oh yeah.
The lack of something to eat, and it brings on stress and some of the other diseases that get going, in my experience. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
So if, we'll say, a farmer is finding dead animals periodically around the field, what's the best advice to do there?
You'd definitely worry about your clostridial diseases. That'd be a big one. So we could blood them. Problem is, by the time you get the bloods back, it's a week or 2 after, and you might have lost some more. You'd be more inclined to go in with a vaccine and cover them.
And would you advise maybe getting some of them to the lab if you?
Oh yeah, straight away.
I think a lot of farmers are guilty for not doing that.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Until
you lose maybe 8 or 10, you say, "Jeez, I should have brought them first few to the lab."
They have to be fairly fresh to get results. So we see some that are not quite fresh enough, and we don't really get a result from them.
Yeah.
But if you can get fresh fresh lambs or anything to a lab,
Yeah.
they can find out exactly what the problem is, and you can, again, targeted treatment. You can treat with vaccine or antibiotics as required, which would be the main thing to do.
Yeah. In Ireland, we have the regional veterinary laboratories, which are government funded in a sense, and they are a useful asset to us sheep farmers anyway, because you know what your problems are. But it's very easy to talk yourself out of the hassle of going, but I think it's well worthwhile, and I have used it quite a bit in the past. But as Josh said, the other important one that I've been using a bit, and I found something interesting last year. My hogged yos seemed a little bit dirty around about July last year, and I would normally my sheep would be clean enough on the back end, and I was thinking, could it be worms? I generally don't dose older sheep. Sent a sample in with Finbar off to the lab and come back with rumen fluke.
Yeah.
So I don't know, was it the wet year last year?
Yeah, we saw a lot of rumen fluke last year.
Yeah.
Cavan's a very wet county, so we would have a lot of fluke and worm anyway. Yeah. Depends on grass growth and everything else, so fluke and worm tend to live at the bottom of the grass. So if they're eating further down, if it's getting a bit short, then they'd be picking up more worm eggs and passing them on. So.
Is there any advice, we'll say, for, especially this time of year when you've lambs? It's not a particularly bad year for worms in my experience, but is there any advice for treating worms in general? I'll give you an example. One particular year, I happened to have a bit of Sidectin left over, and I used it 3 consecutive doses. And at the end of that year, I had a problem. I started losing lambs.
So you do want to alternate worm doses, so go for a white dose instead, so your tramadol or something like that. Change up your dosing occasionally, otherwise you can get a resistance. So it'd kill 90% of the worms, but those 10% that are left over, then the next time around, they've multiplied, so then you're only killing 80% the next time, and then the third time you're only killing 40%, say. So if you change dosing and manage to kill the rest of them, then you're always keeping the worm burden to a reasonable amount.
So really the best advice is almost every dose alternate.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be every dose, but every 3 doses, say, change to something else.
Yeah, I suppose the same applies for liver fluke as well, because there is resistance starting to show in some of the...
there is resistance starting to show. We are just limited on the drugs that we have available for liver fluke. And again, in sheep, we're limited more because there aren't so many products available for sheep, whereas cattle we have more options. So
good man. Well, look, this little girl's ready for bed. Josh, thank you very much for your time. Fair play to you. Good man. Thank you. Cheers.